insights on the role of marketplaces to grow a business. And yes, one more session before lunch. We've got Brian Walker back again, and he's going to talk with far more insight than me, no doubt, on preparing your business for the future of retail. I think half the reason we come to these things is to look into the future, and Brian's going to gaze into his crystal ball for us. So hand over to that, and there is actually some cool stuff happening at lunch. I'll tell you like for 30 seconds before you head off when Brian's done.
I'm never sure if it's the session before lunch or after lunch is the one that takes the most concentration. So bear with me and we'll get into it as soon as I find the clicker. All right, hi everyone, Brian Walker. Thanks again for being here. Talking to a predominantly digital audience about the future of retail is an interesting proposition, and to do it in 20 minutes is even more interesting because you're all well aware of many of the trends, but I'm going to touch on a few and share some time together. Retail Doctor Group, we build roadmaps for clients, roadmaps that maximize today and into the future through our insights, strategy, implementation business. No great surprise, we're at the start of the fourth industrial revolution, and I stress that we're at the start. And of course, we're being driven by this fusion of digital, biological, and physical worlds. And we are just, as retailers, one recipient of this change. Commerce, medicine, education, every field is touched upon. From cloud computing, blockchain, Internet of Things, AI, you've heard many of the terms today, through to big data, through to the physical, the change and evolution that will occur to the physical state, the change coming for shopping centres, the change for physical retail, the integration properties, autonomous vehicles. Your children will be very unlikely to drive in their middle age, and their children will most certainly not be driving. And so think about that from a societal perspective. Think about that for insurers, registrations of vehicles, car parks, you name it, the CBD itself. Think of the structure and composition of change. New materials, 3D printing. Already we have fashion shows where every model is wearing a 3D printed garment. Think through neurotechnology. In our business, we do a lot of work in neuroscience, neuromarketing. I'll touch on that in a second. Synthetic biology, genetics. We are at the start of the change. And so today I want to talk a little bit, very briefly, about 9 chapters of the retail future. And I'm going to go to 2030 as a line in the sand. Shopping at the edge. This concept is that the physical or that the retail, particularly as we've known retail to be, is not actually at the center of the customer's experience. Shopping is done at the edge. The way a customer touches your brand is well before they go online, well before they visit the physical store, and it actually is at the edge, so I'll touch on that. The Amazonian model has taught us a little bit about the merge of technology, media, and retail. And I think the Woolworths model gets us one step closer in Australia, and I'll touch on that. Data, I don't have to talk to you about data, you know that so well. But I'll talk about the deployment of data, if time permits, the rise of the machines, and of course, the onset of mixed reality. Now, 2 years ago, half these topics wouldn't have been on the board, nor would have this idea of end-of-channel thinking. I suspect in the next couple of years, the term online and offline integration will all be back of house as retailers employ behavioural scientists, coders. In fact, Amazon is a case in point. 85% of their staff are coders. So think what that means. They're software coders, and you grew up in traditional retail as I did, you know I'd be hard-pressed getting a job in Amazon. It's all about code. I want to talk a little bit about this thing called the retail ecosystem, the renaissance and rebirth, if you like. There are over 1,356 shopping centres in this country. We're third per capita for physical shopping space. That will shake out. There's no doubt that will shake out. And for those who know Retail Doctor Group, we're very involved in understanding the why of consumer behaviours, understanding the limbic part of the brain. And we absolutely encourage, if you are in the retail business, do understand the psychology of the human brain, because it tells you the innate drivers, the why. People tend to talk about customer centricity as though it's a new thing. Well, I guess I'm old enough to tell you that Sam Walton was customer centric. But it's how deep you get into those insights and how you deploy them that matters. And then I want to touch a little bit on the circular economy, all that in 20 minutes, in fact 16 minutes. Let's try. Shopping at the edge. Start to think less about shopping in this lineal sense, that I start at a point and I finish at a point. Think of it more as a kaleidoscope of activity. And shopping at the edge is a place where consumers start and hope to complete their physical journey, usually outside a brand or retailer's physical and digital space, outside of it. So social media, messaging, apps play a huge part increasingly. Buying at the edge, mobile wallets, email, social media, shops. Think about that absolute entry point for customers. And not just at the beginning of the journey, but at the end of the journey. So when your customer does business with you, what is their experience post that moment? What community are you inviting them back into? How are you building this circular frame? And how are you communicating on self-service channels, chatbots, chats, instant messaging, such that, as we said earlier, the customer becomes part of your village? And increasingly we see good retailers thinking much more about that than this idea of getting them in for the transaction. The other thing we see out in the world is a lot of retailers, physical retailers, have seen so much change even in the short term. And from a business information system perspective, they've got legacy networks. They've got legacy point-of-sale systems and back ends. You've got CEOs who have boards trying to understand how to digitalize, how to integrate. And so we talk to them about integrating this unified customer platform to deliver a connected customer experience. And this enables retailers essentially very much in the space of increasing agility, creating a seamless customer experience across channels, increase store-associated productivity, and of course make great data-driven decisions. So what does that mean for a legacy retailer? Well, it means to think about their information architecture, to think about the data and the way it's collected, but to have very specific deployment tactics around it and collect data that can be meaningfully turned into insights as distinct from data for data's sake, and therefore start to deliver personalization in real time. So we've seen an interesting piece change within organizations. Point-of-sale systems, information systems were there to support the business. Increasingly, they're going to drive the business. 55% of all Americans are Amazon Prime subscribers. In Australia, it's about 24% and growing. Prime as an example, Amazon as an example, is a fascinating little look into the present and the future. The way that it integrates and infuses into our lifestyle. So there I am talking to Alexa in the morning, watching Prime TV, checking out the ads, being inundated with the message, and the brand rises to the fore. And I'm an acolyte or a fan or part of that village. And think about that from the immersive customer experience. So they see me not just for a subset of my life, they're with me, if I choose to, all my life. And we just consider that in light of a model where we say we're going to capture the shopper between 8 and 3, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Meanwhile, I'm watching the latest Amazon Prime, and it's the constant reinforcement of the brand, constant reinforcement of the message that's so interesting and so powerful. Some would say Amazon is a logistics company, but again, its web engine service business is 30% of its business, and it enables the capability and the economic model to make this fly. We've heard today already from some great speakers on this concept of seamless shopping. And to really break it down, I think that there is 3 C's involved with seamless shopping to think about as we move forward. The process of engaging people in a meaningful experience. So here are the 3 C's that we see as driving the future. First of all, context. The setting, environment, or event in which the customer participates. We talk about customer experience, but it's this broad umbrella. What event are we creating? If we think of a customer's journey with us as a series of events, through a circular flow. What events are we creating? If I walk into a store and I see it racked up high, if I see platforms that just offer me the same homogeneous product at the same price, if people are just trying to approach me from a transactional point of view, there's no context. And for me to have context is the underlying foundation of experience. Without that, it's very, very hard to deliver real customer sentiment, real customer journey. And data. We know a lot about data, of course. But how does it provide personalization? If you know that I go online to you and I purchase a product from you at 10 a.m. on Sunday, or I walk into your shop if you've got one, and I purchase product from you in that shop at 11 a.m. on Sunday, what do you know about me? All you really know is that I walked into your environment and I made a purchase at a certain time. So you know the what, because you know the time I visited. You know the how, I paid with credit card. And some of us are dining out on that and saying that's customer insights. I'm saying that's customer data. What you need to learn, of course, and know, and where the future is, the study of the brain that leads us into the why. What were the emotional attributes of your brand, of your differentiated offer, of your uniqueness? What was the village? What was the community? What was my emotional state at the time? What were the attributes that made me want to be there and therefore delivered the why, the Simon Sinek why, if you like. So I always look at this thing called customer and I think, what's the context and what's the content? And therefore, what's the retail experience that we're joining the dots for? And of course, how agile are we? Most systems aren't that agile. Okay? Most aren't. Now, there's agility in the thinking. Sometimes we see there's a lack of agility in culture, by the way. But agility, speed, momentum, doesn't come typically from the classic infrastructure systems background and the classic siloed organization. You look at the world's best retailers and they don't think in terms of silos. So you're thinking about this contextual change to how to deploy. Rise of the machines, I'm going to skip this really, but of course we're seeing machinery, robotics, AI and so forth. What was interesting around this is when we go out and study from a traditional retail point of view, when we study consumers, what we see is, as part of our business, we see is that when there's a value add offer and when there's absolute link like buy now, pay later, click and collect, all these great services, and we're creating this value chain for them, they're going to spend more with us. When we do part of the value chain, they spend less with us. And by the way, I think I mentioned this morning, about 30% of consumers we've spoken to in the last while tell us they get inundated with points, and this thing that we determine is loyalty. So we set up a loyalty program, and we go, fantastic, we're going to give them points, and we see increased business. But of course, the drivers of why aren't there, and price is not a driver for loyalty. Convenience and range will be in accompanying with price, but what is our true value proposition? And I think this was the point this morning too, ladies and gentlemen, that I was trying to get to. I haven't heard it yet, but no doubt it'll be touched on. The role of brand and the role of it as a unique differentiator. What is my place in the sun as a business? What is unique about the proposition? And if we do continue to build homogeneous platforms that consolidate across, if we do just try to make it about scale, an acquisition scale, which is fine for many businesses, but for some it's not, it's a question then of what is relevant, what is unique to us. And I love the piece around what is our purpose. What is our societal purpose? What is our economic purpose? These are all key points. And then, of course, clever people around the world thinking about this thing called the physical store, integration with the networks. Remember, we're only at the start of this. Interactive stores, smartphone technology, QR codes, the start of the journey. And in time to come, I'm pretty confident, I might not see it, but soon enough, you'll be sitting at home and you'll think, oh, I need a new pair of Nike runners. You'll press your device. By the way, the smartphones will phase out too by 2030, at least, 2035 maybe. And you will press whatever that device is, And that device will take you to the metaverse. And you'll be sitting inside the metaverse. You'll order your Nike shoes, all from your lounge room, and they'll be delivered. And you'll have a heck of a great experience in the journey. This is the start, just the journey. Imagine going to a food court in virtual reality to order a pizza and being able to shop or play a game or watch a movie while you wait for your physical pizza to be made and delivered. That's the Nike example. That's coming downstream. So the purpose of a metaverse, which is interesting, is not to function in isolation, but to build bridges between the virtual and real world. And I hope this plays. Let's give it a bash. There's a younger, skinnier, leaner Brian running in. I'm in the metaverse now, if this works. Here I am at the metaverse. I'm just in the virtual reality. Pick all these trendy, cool clothes. Looking very sharp, I might add, without even trying one thing on. And of course, I buy. This, for those who haven't seen this idea of a metaverse, is kind of like, I don't know, what Thomas Edison must have felt like at some stage in the evolution of man. It is the clunky of clunky. It is fundamentally a gaming site adapted for retail. But it's coming. Now, some would argue with World Wide Web 3 and so forth and so on there, it is asking me to purchase, and away I go. So there we have the physical environment, the augmented mixed reality environment starting to talk to one another. How will retailers face this? The legacy retailers, the big network retailers, the digital startups that are trying to play in this space where we know that physical retail has an important part to play. And why does physical retail have an important part to play? Because unless we're knife-wielding axe murderers, people like people, and we're social by instinct. Otherwise, we would just stream this whole event today easily, because we've got the technology. So we're social by instinct. The next trend, of course, and I touched on this morning, is disintermediation. What it really means is the supply channel. The supply chain is dissolving or fragmenting or changing or evolving or whatever word you want to use. That lineal piece is also starting to dilute. Now, for years, we've had retail brands and suppliers that have wanted to be retailers. And they've never had the technology to successfully do it. Now they do. And increasingly so. If you're a brand and you can go direct B to consumer, what's your value proposition for a retailer? In fact, what's the retailer's value proposition for you? So no longer quite that lineal place to be. So that's another future trend. When we build on AI, we build on predictive data, we build this technology piece. Supply channels, as we're calling them today, will be much more about consumer pull channels, but they're going to get smarter and smarter, which will be a great thing. And it'll be a great thing for a few reasons. One is there's an enormous amount of landfill that comes out of the back of retail. So a lot of products never actually make it to a consumer's home, and they end up in landfill. This will get smarter, ordering will get smarter. In fact, through this last year, a shipment, a container, has quadrupled in price on average in the last year. We talk about rising prices for retailers. That's a really obvious one. So again, technology, predicting demand, calculating supply, we'll see clear benefits there. When we think about this thing called omnichannel, I think, much more about this concept of an ecosystem. And the organization you'll be leading, coders, data scientists, behavior scientists, all the people that you know only so well. And how will retail attract these people? How will it make it viable for them as a career? All these things will play a part. And if you're a pure play retailer, fantastic. How will you drive a profitable return? Probably you'll go into some form of growth scale to be acquired, or you'll move into more of this physical ecosystem environment. So it's this idea of this vast interconnected community of consumers, retailers, and partners. So recently we had Ian Bailey speak at one of our events, the Kmart MD. Kmart do business, they're partners with Amazon Web Services. So partnerships, collaborations will become the norm in the industry, much more so than competitor versus competitor. And they'll need to be because of the agility of consumers and space. Pardon me. I just thought this was interesting. The gentleman from Woolworths was really good, and he talked about this agility and speed to customer. Here's Woolworths and Uber Eats partnering to make same-hour grocery delivery a reality across Australia. And so we'll see Woolworths Metro on the Uber app. It's just these little things we start to see. More collaborations from less traditional partners. One last comment on the circular economy, if I may. This is just interesting that we see a real rise of local brands. So whilst retailers talk about growth, it is also important to think about local environments, the local phrase, if you like, having a purpose. No matter what business you are, we know from all the insights work we do, consumers love to buy into a brand, and they love to buy into a branded purpose. And that will never change. But when you're talking to your board or to your executive, the question to ask is, what is our purpose? And it's just an example here of H&M, Rewear, one-stop digital customer-to-customer resell destination. We'll see retailers play in non-traditional channels, we already are, but we'll see real consumer sentiment around your purpose. No surprise, you're going to hear me talk about neuroscience and neuromarketing. I touched on it earlier. People talk about customer insights. Asking a whole lot of converted customers or your customers what they think of you is like looking in a mirror. You know what the answer is going to be. So dig deeper, understand the human brain, link it to technology, link it to the curated retail ecosystem, and you're on the way to the future of retail, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much in 20 minutes.
That's great. Wow, I took more notes for that session than I did, I think, the rest of the day combined. So thank you for that, Brian. That was amazing. Okay, I'm standing between you and lunch. Two things. One,